Yay.
So yeah, as part of the welcoming, I thought, maybe you can share a little bit about yourself. You have so many offerings that come through you and so many gifts. And what could people know about you? What you are, who you are, what comes through you at this time?
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, pleasure to be here and also really glad to have the chance to share with you all this evening. Um, really looking forward to this visit to Canada and to sharing some of our work. So, what to say? I just turned 60 this year. Um, a dear friend of mine couldn't make it to my birthday, and I was really upset with him. I was like, "Come on, it's my 60th birthday," and he said, "Well, 60 is just a number; it doesn't mean anything." And I was like, "Hmm. So what does 60 actually mean to me?" And I took that for a walk by the river. That question, and as I was walking, I heard this kind of quiet voice in my ear saying, "Yakov, how about for your 60th birthday you give up fighting?" And it's not that I've been a fighter as in the boxing ring, but I've had a lot of energy, a lot of combative energy with the world at large to want to change things. In my teenage years, late teenage years, I was in the peace movement. I was arrested a number of times doing non-violent, apparently non-violent peace actions. I've been very passionate in that way, and of course I've also been with the same woman for 38 years. We just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. We have one son who lives on the land where we live. We live on an eco project with hydroelectric energy and solar PV, and a couple of Exmoor ponies who are the compost creators. We call that black gold that they produce. And I'm very very blessed in my life. In my early 20s, on a golf course, I was hit by lightning, and that moment really changed my life because it really brought me close to the knowledge of my own mortality. And at that stage of life, I was kind of, in the teenage realms of I'm going to live forever and I've got all the time in the world. And suddenly I realized that might not be true. And actually, it's been very useful because in many shamanic or indigenous cultures, being hit by lightning is, um, if that happens, you get taken straight to the shaman to learn. It's one of the ways of initiation. And so I've been very blessed to not just to work with Gabrielle Roth, the founder of the Five Rhythms work, a wonderful pioneer of embodied spirituality. I've also been blessed to work with many indigenous teachers around the world. Still do. We have many, many dear friends in the Amazon rainforest, three godchildren there. I'm an author, written three books so far. I've got so many more in me. I just pray that life gives me the time to complete those books that I want to write. And so the reason I started with this thing about fighting is because making peace inside myself, in my marriage, and in this world is really the thing that drives me. And when I was young, peace was an idea like that one should be quiet and gentle, and peace was, putting flowers in the turrets of tanks and painting on military buildings and all of these kinds of things, which you could do in those days. You couldn't do that anymore. And as I've grown older, I've come to recognize that peace is a very great power. It takes an enormous amount of courage and strength to live peacefully in this world. And that doesn't mean that one can't agree or disagree with, or say, I don't agree with that, or that's not right. Um, but it's a deep power, and it's become my guiding. principle is to be in peace. And the deepest way I've ever found to find that peace or to access that is through having a really, really good long dance. And um, it's kind of one of life's jokes to me that I ended up teaching movement because when I was in my 20s, I hated dancing. And Gabrielle taught me in about 20 minutes that it wasn't dancing I hated, it was being self conscious that I hated. And being self conscious was actually extraordinarily um, easy to remedy because Gabrielle was insistent that we would put our attention in a different place than our thinking, which was the sensation of the body being moved by rhythm. And for me, that was an extraordinary revolution to discover that. And the level of creativity that's in our, we call it the unbroken, that lives our body. So it's not just the body, it's the power of life that animates the body. And the level of creativity that's there and the level of resource. So, last thing I'll say in this little intro is um, I am a forever student of life. Um, I'm humbled consistently by my own stubbornness and capacity to repeat um, stories that I've long ago learned are nothing more than stories. Uh, and this balance of uh, kindness and strength with and discipline with my own mind, my own sense of self, in relationship, to be more generous, to find what's ours. And that's really the principle of our work, is to support people to discover again and again what's ours to be and to give, because we understand that it's not what I can get that life that gives me contentment. It's what I can give, what I can contribute in a way that has meaning. That's the essence of our work. Mm.
Thank you so much, Jakob. That is such a beautiful introduction, and I love the acknowledgement of the five rhythms lineage and some of the teachings that have impacted you so very early on from our shared teacher Gabriel Roth. And I know that you and Susanna were with Gabrielle for many, many years. You held the Moving Center School UK and taught so many of the core programs. And now you and Susanna have created the School of Movement Medicine. Could you share a little bit about that transition of what has led you into your own body of work, and
Mm.
also how is movement medicine different from five rhythms, or how is it an evolution? And can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, I think always important to honor the shoulders that we stand on. Gabrielle, Anna Halprin, you know, Martha Graham, these extraordinary pioneers in dance, not just as performance, but dance as ritual, dance as healing, dance as communication directly between people, dance as storytelling. All of those pioneers that really opened that way, and Gabrielle's particular, in my estimation, I guess, the particular gift she brought was to bring together spirituality and physicality. That spirit wasn't something up there that we had to um, live according to somebody's rules in order to, after we've died, mind you, maybe get the benefit of spirit, some kind of paradise somewhere else. Her whole thing was no, 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 no. We're here in a body, and our job is to bring spirit, our inspiration, in spiritus, into the body, into life. And um, of course, we, as you said, we were with Gabrielle for 18 years, and super grateful to her. It wasn't always easy with her. Our separation from her was challenging for all of us and for our community. You will remember that, Bettina. It was a painful time, more like a divorce. Now we feel very at peace. In fact, Susanna was dreaming about Gabrielle last night. Susanna's my wife. Movement medicine. When we were working with Gabrielle, I was also working with other shamans and teachers, indigenous shamans, mostly in the Arctic Circle, with a man called Matis Penta, who was a Sami shaman, the reindeer people. And I had been dreaming about this man for many years, and through a whole process that I wrote about in one of my books, I got to meet him. And he was like a mentor. And there were there were things that we brought naturally into the five rhythms that we were very clear about. And um, one of them was the sense of ritual and ceremony. Ritual is very important for us in our lives. It's a very important part of movement medicine. On all our weekends, we spend the first evening and day really arriving, inquiring, gathering resources, remembering what we're made from. And then we bring all of that inquiry into a ritual space on the Sunday, and which is an uninterrupted dance. And ritual is really, I think, the one of the essences of movement medicine practices. And what I mean by ritual is a space in which we remember our connection to something greater than ourselves. It's not about belief. Um, People come with no belief, with as Buddhists, as Christians, as Jews, as Muslims, as uh, all kinds of beliefs that come into the space. Movement medicine is a non-denominational ritual space that answers that longing for a direct experience of embodied connection to something greater than ourselves. And of course, for indigenous people in that I've been blessed to work with in, as I said, in the Arctic, also in the Amazon, also in Australia, in many, many places, that sense of being part of, belonging to something greater than ourselves. And I think a lot of the difference was to do with timing. And I haven't practiced the five rhythms for, um, God, nearly 20 years. And I'm sure it's evolved in its understanding and in its expression. But one of the main differences is that in the time when we were working with Gabrielle, a lot of our expression was outward. It was very much to do with um, how ecstatic we could be and how physically sweating and ecstatic we might be in our dance. And it was very often about me and my ecstatic experience. And one of the things that we recognized was that um, the work that we did on the dance floor, where we could be free and liberated, didn't necessarily change our day to day experience of life. Partly because at that time it was dance first and don't think. Like whatever you do, don't think. And we recognized that we had extraordinary experiences on the dance floor. But the second we stopped dancing, our thinking engaged, our ego structures engaged. So we wanted to really find ways of bringing the body, heart, and mind together. That's partly my Jewish background, the Kabbalistic background, which says you don't have soul if you remove either body or heart or mind. And these are three specific intelligences, and we call it the triple woven intelligence of soul. So that means, how do I learn to focus my mind in my movement and to bring it and to use the power of the mind along with the kinesthetic intelligence of the body and the emotional intelligence of the heart. We also do a lot of soul retrieval work in movement medicine. We we work with a mandala. In fact, it's I'll show it to you. Here it is. This thing here that's right behind me. This mandala. It's a whoop. There we go. You can't see all of it, but it gives you an idea. It's a This came in a dream, and this mandala is the story of movement medicine, and it has 21 stations, and those 21 stations are invitations for deep inquiry ongoingly. Who am I? And how can I stand up through the body, heart, and mind? How can I take responsibility for my life through the past, the present, and future? We call that the arc of time. And how can I therefore really fulfill the blueprint of my soul, recognize myself as belonging to the web of life, and through that realize who I am and what's mine to give? So I hope that gives some sense of, you know, there are many, many, many practices that have been inspired by Gabrielle's work, more than 100, I believe. And that's an extraordinary offering that Gabrielle made. And each one of them is very particular, and ours is really a blend of shamanic, psychotherapeutic, trauma aware, systems theory conscious, um, family constellations. These these blends of the study that we have been engaged with for, yeah, getting too long to mention now.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the overview and you naming also, kind of the expansion and evolution that you took and that, ended up in your own maps, essentially. Because I think that blueprint, we often talk about one roots, many branches, as in like Gabrielle and her work really being the root system, and the branches that have come from that with great respect, and also, for some of us teachers, integrating other modalities. And I love how clear that is. And, having studied with you both, the integrity that you bring to each of the traditions that you draw upon is really remarkable.
Thank you.
So, for people coming to the programs, what does a movement medicine workshop look like, and how might it be different from a five rhythms program or open floor, or what's unique about that way of coming together?
I think there's a lot about the our place in the group. We do quite a lot of sharing, and so you have a small group that you work with throughout the weekend. That you're also, we have structures where part of the time your role is as a witness, part of the time you're writing, part of the time you're dancing. There is a real discipline. I love the word discipline. I'm not talking about historical discipline of the 1970s of um, you will do as you're told. That Not that kind of authoritarian discipline. I'm talking about the focus that we can bring, the intensity of concentration that we can bring to our work, and we invite people to really uh, sharpen that the lens of their own focus. We do a lot of interactive work with partners, but we're also breaking down when I know for me, for many years, when Gabrielle or any other teacher said take a partner, that always had a ripple effect in the room. Like, oh my God, I've got to dance with somebody else now. Who am I going to dance with? How am I going to dance with them? Who's it going to be? Like, will I like them? Do I like them? Do they like me? Are they okay? All of this kind of internal dialogue. And we've broken down the mode of relationship through a practice we call Mesa practice, which is all about our awareness of physical space. And I would say one of the keys in movement medicine is the focus on interoception. Interoception is a new word, relatively new word. Susanna first saw it in the American Scientific Journal on a plane somewhere. And interoception is perception of the physical sensation and the language of that in the body. It's internal focus, even with the eyes closed. Like this, we call that the micro dance, where the eyes are closed, but we're very much engaged in physical awareness. And I would say this practice of interoception is probably the deepest shamanic tool that I've ever discovered, because though um, when I first was working with it, I was like, this is rather selfish, isn't it? Like, I'm just paying attention to myself. I've just got my nose in my own belly button. It turns out that people with good interoception, that means people who have the capacity to describe the physical sensation that's happening in their body in words, are naturally far more empathic than people who don't have that skill. So it's a very important skill to learn if peace is one of the intentions of our work. That means, how do I stay in my own backbone and be able to hear you and be able to move with you? And how do I define my boundary? And the clearer the boundary, the more open I can be. If I don't have a strong boundary, then I'm either open and too open, or I have to retreat. So we work with this expanding and contracting and connecting, really the internal experience with our capacity to relate and communicate that experience. And that's relationship with another dancer, but it's also relationship with life itself and with our environment. So we do a lot of these kind of practices. We work with the elements, not as a metaphor, but as a physical reality, the simple understanding that our bodies are elemental bodies, that we are earth, that we are solar powered beings, that we are 65% water, that without breath there is no life. So we work with these elements in order to resource ourselves and shift the focus of our identity from the story I'm telling to what I am, that I am earth, that I am sunlight, that I am water, that I am wind. And that strength of knowing ourselves as elemental beings is a direct way to connect with what we call the unbroken nature of life itself. And that the more we identify with that, the more capable we are of holding and embracing and healing and transforming into medicine that which is broken inside us.
Wow. Well, I'm glad I'm already coming to the program, but for anybody who's interested in Jako's November programs in Canada, you're coming to Toronto first. It is November 8th through the 10th, and the theme is the power stories. And then you're coming to Vancouver November 15th through the 17th to offer ecstasis. Can you maybe talk a bit about the difference of those programs in case we have viewers who are considering coming to one or the other?
Yeah, absolutely. So Power Stories is it's one of my favorites because um, it's simple. If you want to make a difference in this world, you got to deal with power. And power, like money, like life itself, is it's neutral. But we have stories around power. Of course, we know that power can be abused and often is, and most of us have experience of that. And I know for myself, for many years, I made the mistake of thinking that power was not okay, consequently, I was relatively powerless to do anything in life. However, if we know that power itself is neutral, and if we can learn to trust ourselves and to embrace and dance with the history we have with power and to alchemize that, then we can increase our sense of personal power. And personal power is very different than positional power or cultural power, like the family we were born into, the ancestry that we have, the time that we were born into, that kind of societal power. Personal power is something that we have control over. In other words, we can either leave it as it is or we can grow our personal power. And as we grow our personal power, as we become more empowered, then we have the possibility of being more engaged with life in a more impactful way. There are plenty of people in this world, aren't there, who couldn't give two fill in the blank about what they do with their power. They couldn't care less. It's not, they have plenty of power and they wield it without care for the consequences. If we want change in our world, if we want evolution, if we want to evolve as a species, as part of this biosphere, then we need to, those of us who wish for some kind of peaceful coexistence with life, we need to get as strong as we possibly can. And that's not just emotionally, it's also physically strong, it's also mentally strong. And the blend of uh, emotional, mental, and physical strength is the core of our personal power. And in that workshop, we're not just discovering our power for the sake of being powerful, we're also inquiring into what is that power for? Because for so many of us, we don't own or claim or develop our personal power because we're afraid of doing harm, because we see around us the use of power in a harmful way. And that's understandable. But if we want to make a difference in this world, then healing our relationship and updating our relationship with power is a necessity. So that's weekend one. Weekend two, ecstasis. Well, I am I am really wanting to bring back to as many people as possible the original understanding of ecstatic dance. Ecstatic dance is a wonderful thing. I love it that there are more and more people in this world who have places to go and dance and let go. But ecstatic dance isn't just do what you want to do and um, let go in that way. Ecstasis actually means totality. It means sorrow. It means grief. It means fury. It doesn't just mean I'm having an ecstatic time. In other words, I'm joyful and I'm happy and I feel good. Ecstasis doesn't actually exist unless we're willing to embrace the reality, the deeper reality of our experience, which includes shadow and light. And ecstasis, only genuine ecstasis in the old school form of ecstasis, comes when we embrace the reality that's happening now in our lives, in our relationships, in the world around us. And we give that to the dance in a way that is um, surrendered but responsible. Ecstasis doesn't mean that I lose consciousness. It doesn't mean that I'm not present. It doesn't mean that I'm going off into some shamanic other world. It means total presence and total surrender embraced. It means the it's as creative as life itself. So in ecstasis, things change very, very quickly, and I'm really passionate about bringing the wildness and the discipline that is part of genuine ecstasis back into this world. And you know, I've been blessed to participate in um, many indigenous rituals. I'm thinking of one um, when I was in Botswana at an old grandmother's end of year gathering, and the the power of this small group of people in a small, like, rural, out of the village place where we just have a round hut, and what goes on there with the same rhythm being played for hours, and people in the same movement for a very long time, repeating the same movement until one person gets touched by the spirit of the dance, and the whole ceremony is holding space for that one person that is moved by that spirit. But because they are not in the myth of individualism that's the disease of our modern world, they are individuals, but they're not stuck in that disease of individualism. Therefore, they know they are themselves, but they are part of something. And because they know that in the dance itself, that person's ecstasis, that person's connection to spirit, that person's healing is a healing for the whole community. And everyone receives it. And so this is one of the keys of ecstasis. It's not just about me. We call it me, myself, my royal I-ness. It's not just about that. It's about we. It's about our place in the web of life and letting ourselves be moved by more than our own ideas or our own experience, by something greater. And that requires an extraordinary attention and focus. And um, it's worth it, because that level of ecstasis is deeply healing. Yeah.
Thank you, Jakob. We have Julia Ray on the call with us. Julia, if you just want to wave, I know you're not feeling so well, but for those of you that are interested in learning more about the Toronto workshop, all the information is on the School of Medicine website, as well as on Ecstatic Dance Toronto. But if you have questions, you can also message Julia in the chat or get in touch with her after. Anything you want to add, Julia, about the Toronto program? No, good. No. Yeah, for Vancouver, I will be bringing Jakob, so I know a lot of you already signed up, but if you have questions, do get in touch with me. And we have about 20 spots left at this time. The other offering, Jakob, when you're coming, which I'm so excited for, as I know some people don't love the group work. It's just too much for them, and they might just be needing something else. You also work with people one-on-one with your shamanic healing sessions, and so as part of your time here in Vancouver, between the two programs, you're offering one-on-one in-person sessions. Can you share a little bit about what people might expect when they work with you one-on-one, or what happens in those sessions?
Yeah, well, those sessions will be in person, and yeah, we have a space where we'll be working. And the way this works is really traditional in the way that I've been trained by my indigenous teachers. And I'll tell you something funny. I mentioned Biko Matis Penta, the Sami shaman who I went to see many times. He lived way up north in the Arctic Circle in a little town called Kautokeino. And when I went to see him, I didn't ever ask him for anything. I just went to say thank you to him, because he'd been such a presence in my dream life I just wanted the chance to say thank you. But after a few years of visiting him, we used to drum together and walk in the wilds of the Arctic. And um, I realized actually I wanted to learn some more about shamanic healing from him. So I asked him. He said, "Yes, yes, yes, sure." So I went there, and after a day or two of being there, he said, "Okay, it's time now for the shamanic healing lesson." So he cleared out the table from his living room, made some space, and then he laid down on the floor, and he said, "Go ahead." And I was like, "Go ahead, what?" And he said, "Heal me." I was like, "No, no, no, I don't think you understand. Um, I was asking you to teach me." He said, "Yeah, this is how I teach you." And so he just asked me to do what the work that I could do. And then that was the process, which is very traditional in the way of learning. The idea of actually learning techniques in mostly we learn in indigenous contexts through a lot of witnessing and being alongside and simply absorbing what's going on. And I'd done so much of that in my life. So the way it works is this, where I work with the drum, and you might bring a particular question, and then with the drum I am focusing on asking all that guides me to help me to see and understand how that session might be able to help you on a physical, on a emotional, on a mental, on a spiritual level to take the next step in your evolution. And a shamanic healing traditionally has these three stages. One is if, as we go through life, life has an impact. Sometimes we hear words when we're in very vulnerable states, maybe as children. Um, Maybe we've had traumatic experiences, and those traumatic experiences leave a mark in the physical body. Um, could be in the musculature, could just be in the fascia. And so we will work to find those and to release those from the body. So that's like making a space. It's like if you take the metaphor of gardening, it's like doing the weeding, making space for what it is that you want to grow. And so we remove that which is no longer useful. And then we would do traditional soul retrieval or soul development. So what is the seed that you wish to plant into that space, that the extraction, the healing, the removal of, um, I'm going to call it negative energy, because some energy is negative and not helpful to us. So the impact of that in the body is removed. If you don't replace that with something intentional, just in the same way as working with a garden, you do the weeding and don't do anything for a month and come back, it will be exactly as it was before you did the weeding. So we have to replace it, we have to put something in there, and that something is a part of the soul that has been waiting for that moment, that sense of really good timing for some quality of your being that either couldn't stay because of trauma, so had to separate off um, through disassociation, or it's just a part of you that you've not yet had the time, or it's not been the right time for that quality of soul to be embodied. So, with the help of my guidance, we bring that in to the body. It's like planting seeds. And then the third stage of the healing is to rebalance the whole system to allow for the best kind of integration of that work. And that's pretty much it. And sessions take around 90 minutes. And if you're interested in such a session, it's really best if you don't have something to do immediately afterwards, but you can rest and write and integrate.
Wonderful. And I just checked, we still have availability for those sessions. I put the link in the chat, so there's information
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I can. We can do that distance. And I just see that Jenny is needing to leave. And thank you, Jenny. Nice to meet you. Thanks for
Thank
being here.
you. Thanks for being here. Yeah, we have a couple more minutes, and Jakob, first I want to open kind of question and answers to you. You know, maybe there's anything else you want to share or anything you want to ask before we open the question answer period to the rest of the group for a few moments.
Well, I think I just want to say thank you for showing up this evening. It's really lovely to be with you in this way, and um, I'm super grateful. I live an extraordinarily blessed and privileged life, and it's my um, choice and intention to make the best use of the incredible privilege and blessings I've had in my life. And I'm really grateful to have the chance to come into these communities in Canada and share a little bit of what I've been learning in the hope that it might support you along your way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jakob. Yeah, so we are a small enough group that you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask the question, and then mute yourself again when Jakob answers. Or you can type the question in the chat, and I'm happy to read it out loud should you not be able to speak if you're at work or driving. Well, we don't type and drive. Maybe that was a bad example, but yeah, so if there are questions, we'll just take a couple moments for those.
It's a big deal, isn't it, to speak up sometimes?
All right, there don't seem to be any questions. That probably means we answered a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Should that change in the next minute or so, just please make it clear by raising your hand or unmuting yourself. But I think I want to ask you, just as someone who also is a space holder and teacher and healer in my own way, um, how do you keep recharged and resourced? My experience lately has been that the spaces that I hold, people need a lot more. There's so much going on the dance floors, and I think the collective suffering has really amplified in my experience. And how do you, as a space holder and teacher and healer, keep resourced and committed to the path? We've talked
Yeah,
sometimes about compassion fatigue that can happen, or just burnout,
yeah.
feeling exhausted, hopeless, all those things.
Well, I I'm thank you. It's a really, really important question, and several ways. I do spend a lot of time being with the suffering in our world, and the way that I keep resourced is by also spending an equal amount of time with the extraordinary beauty in our world and the extraordinary generosity and bravery and incredible nature of human beings as a species. I make it my business to each week to really look into the incredible changes that are happening in our planet. I look back at history. I read a lot. I spend a lot of time in nature. And I spend a lot of time in my own practice. Like every morning we get up at like 5:30. I spend the first 2.5 hours of my day in practice. And that's walking up on the moor, getting in the cold water up on the moor, dancing, getting on the bike, lifting weights, making sure that I'm taking care of my own physical well being, my own emotional well being. And then I'm blessed, I have a relationship that has gone on getting better and better and better. And after 38 years, I actually have never even read about the kind of places that we have um, reached, and that is unbelievably resourcing. and strengthening. So I think this is really, really important that we we don't get carried away by the algorithm of suffering and imagine that there is more suffering in the world now than there ever has been. That's simply not true. It's not the case. If you go back to the Middle Ages, things were a hell of a lot worse in general. And yes, there is a lot of suffering and a lot of war and a lot of conflict and a lot of difficulty, but there is equally extraordinary courage, creativity, and brilliance. The amount of regenerative projects that are going on, the speed in which human beings are waking up to our need to take care. Whether it's quick enough, we'll see. But I have every confidence that we will turn this corner as a species. I also, the other thing I do is I visit the future. I visit the future often, and I water the seeds of the possibility, I'm even going to say the probability, that human beings have become a benevolent presence on this earth, even more so than we have. And you know, the sad thing is in our world that that we don't get to hear about this so often, and you actually have to make effort to find these balancing realities. Because if you listen to the news, you'll imagine that we live in a world that's far more violent, far more dangerous, far more racist, far more separate, far more than it's ever been. This is not actually true. There's a long way to go. 100%. We have a lot of work to do, but we have evolved and we are evolving. And so I don't allow myself to. Um, I met an amazing Palestinian woman a few months ago, and I'm in touch with a lot of Israelis and Palestinian people who are remaining in deep conversation even today. And this amazing woman, she said to us, "You have to create your own algorithm in life." And that doesn't mean ignore the suffering, of course not. We can't ignore it, we feel it. But make sure you balance it with seeking out beauty and remembering beauty and giving as much importance to that, because beauty feeds the soul. And there is so much beauty on this earth and in this life. And in very simple ways, you know, just a smile when you're doing the shopping will change your life and change the life of the person you're smiling at. These things make huge differences. So I simply refuse to believe this narrative that times are harder than they've ever been. It's simply not true.
Thank you. What I'm taking away, I was already attuning to that when you were speaking, is really balance, like, the holding of it both, the dark, the light, the beauty, the suffering, and in the middle, that commitment to one's own practice. And also, as you said, dreaming the future as we wish it to be, that active part.
Yes.
Because I'm with you. I also don't agree with that. Things are just getting worse, worse, worse. And it's so easy to buy into that narrative and feel deflated by that and
Yeah.
hopeless. And
Yeah.
so to keep that flame inside of us strong too, that we can lead with faith and hopefulness and strength.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you just shared.
Yeah. And you know, as it's often said that, you know, even if we are, you know, we do know that our sun will die in around 1 billion years. So all of this will have been a dream in a matter of time. But even if we are looking at the sunset, sunsets are beautiful. Sunset means the end of a day, it means the end of a chapter. Sunsets are beautiful. And I think this is important that we are we don't imagine that we understand really how things should be on this earth. For me, my only religion is the mystery, that life is a great mystery, and it really is a great mystery. And I have my own predilections, the things that I believe in and work for and live for. But the truth is, I really don't know how things should work out. So I'm not going to bother spending too much of my life worrying about that. I just live today as best as I can.